It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions.
Touchdown, San Diego!
Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports on a Monday? We do. From the DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, we welcome you to our Monday bonus podcast. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton in studio. My co-host John Riley getting ready and warmed up to go out to left field. He joins us. We have a ton of topics on the table coming out of the National Football League draft and coming out of a great sports weekend. Our podcast brought to you by North County Eye Center of Poway and Escondido. We will all need help with our eyes somewhere down road. Something minimal, something major. When that day comes, think North County Eye Center. And by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. 9 stores in San Diego. You've got projects for 2024. Think of them when it comes time for materials, or think of them if you want ideas. They do provide consultants to DIXIELINE Lumber. John Riley, we watched too much football in the spring. Wall-to-wall coverage, NFL draft. We watched some pretty bad baseball, too. We got a ton of topics to talk about.
Yeah, Detroit Rock City was alive. The NFL draft was great. The Padres, not so much.
Well, we're going to go a lot of different directions. A couple pieces of business. We do something right at the end. For those of you just joining us on our live stream, you've heard us make reference to this. We want you to be part of what we're doing. You can go to the chat box right now. We want you to be part of Fans Forum. When we're done at the end of the hour telling you our opinions on all the big stories, we allow you to join us in Fans Forum. John Riley's the one that created this idea. He's going to have to defend what it has become.
Okay, so if this is your chance to talk to Hacksaw, you got a question or comment for Lee, drop it in the live chat on Facebook, X, or on YouTube. I already see Steve has jumped in to Fans Forum, and we'll get to everybody at the conclusion of Hacksaw's Headlines.
And a reminder, if you like sports, I write on this big website right there. That's the address on the top of the screen, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. Like you to check it, need you to check it, want you to check it, demand that you check it every morning. You'll know every story there is in the world of sports. For example, today, a massive NFL draft recap. So check my website every morning. And when you go to the website on the homepage, there's an orange box right at the top. Fill out the information. Join Hacksaw's Insiders Group. You'll get all kinds of special emails when we're doing special things for the website as well as the podcast. Share. Tell everybody in your directory what you're doing with us. Want you to subscribe so you'll get the alerts every time we post something new on the chat box and on our YouTube channel. So we got a lot of things, business concluded there. Let's talk about the most important business, sports. John, pick a topic.
Okay, we're not going to do NFL draft right away. We want to talk baseball. And I'll tell you, you always say, have a great sports weekend. It wasn't a good one for the Padres.
Oh, my goodness. Padres, Angels, terrible time. Dodgers, right back where most people expected the Dodgers to be. Padres, they've lost 4 in a row. They've lost 5 of their last 6. The Phillies come into the yard, hit 9 home runs in 3 games. Hard statistic to understand. The Padres are 6-11 at Petco Park this season. Michael King, if it's not walks, it's hits. If it's not hits, it's home run balls. He's given up the most home runs of anybody in Major League Baseball, John. He's given up 10 bombs already this season. And, of course, he got smoked over the weekend by the Philadelphia Phillies. In 36 innings, Michael King, 10 home runs, 53 guys on base in 36 innings. He's had a couple of good starts, and then he's had just some typical really bad starts. You got that issue. Yu Darvish has thrown 1 bullpen to test the neck ailment. No decision yet whether he gets the ball Tuesday, whether he gets the ball Thursday, whether he stays on the disabled list. And then there's Joe Musgrove. 4 bad starts in the 7 outings this season. In the 16 innings through those 4 bad starts, Joe Musgrove has given up 6 home runs, has given up 36 guys on base. He's got an ERA of 11.25. There's something not right with Joe Musgrove. He says it's not physical. Maybe he just needs an extra day's rest between starts to aid in his recovery. And then there's Philadelphia. They've won 10 of their last 12. In 29 games this season, the Phillies have hit 37 home runs in 29 games this season. So that's my summary of where Padre baseball is. Suddenly, pitching seems to be a problem again. And John Riley says,
I'm wondering about Michael King, because when we got him in the trade, everyone's like, hey, this guy would be a number 3 starter. Well, now he's a number 4 since we got Cease. But they're teeing off on him. I wonder if the Yankee fans are like, yeah, good riddance. We snaked you on that deal for Juan Soto. I mean, what's your take?
Well, each of the 10 home runs has come on a fastball that he's put right down the middle. So movement has become a problem. His fastball's only been at 94 miles an hour. I didn't realize how many walks were involved with his pitching repertoire when he throws. There's bulldog in him. There's no doubt that he competes out there on the mound, but he's getting lit. He's getting lit a lot. Now, I said way back when the trade was made with Soto, did they get the right pitchers in the deal? Because the pitcher I wanted was Clark Schmidt. I knew about Michael King. Padres could not get access to Schmidt. They elected to take King because of velocity and tenacity and some of those intangible things. But, man, to give up 10 home runs already, I mean, that's like a pace for 45. That's Lance Lynn numbers. So there's an issue there. I don't know what to make of Musgrove. He says he's not having issues with the shoulder. He shows flashes of velocity, but his location is all over the place. The fact that he's had to get away from that hard slider to adopt something different, that's something different has just he's not been able to locate it, and he is really scuffling. I mean, those 4 bad starts, 11.75 ERA, that's not vintage Joe Musgrove. So they got some issues there. Okay, we go from that. Let's talk about the Dodgers. The Dodgers have won 6 of 7, and they're hitting the hell out of the ball. Despite the pitching woes, the Dodgers are doing really well, but there's always a but. And there's now another issue with Walker Buehler. He's gone through 4 rehab starts, and they wanted him to go from A to AA up to AAA in the rehab starts. His last start in Albuquerque, he lasted only 4 innings, 5 runs, 7 hits, struggled with his location, 86 pitches along the way. I don't know that he's ready to rejoin the Dodgers. The Dodgers don't know when he's ready to pitch at the major league level. His velocity seems to be down again, so this is a real iffy proposition. He, of course, is one of 9 Dodger pitchers on the disabled list.
Walker Buehler. I mean, we're going to see this guy soon. I always thought he was a great pitcher, but it just goes to show you this epidemic of elbow injuries all across the league.
And his second surgery in his career.
So what about the other guys in the Dodgers, like Dustin May? Are we getting any updates on him?
He's not doing anything except long toss and weight work. He's not quote been back on the mound yet. So they were thinking June 1. I don't know if there's been a delay there. Kershaw has always been August 1st that we know. There is no Tony Gonsolin. He's gone for the year with the knee replacement ligament issue. They think that Blake Trinan is close to coming off the disabled list, but they just got so many guys on the disabled list, and at this point they've kind of drained everybody out of Oklahoma City, and they just moved one of their young pitchers to the 60-day DL. So they're a little bit wafer thin right now because they don't have anything left at AAA to bring up, and the young kids, the Gavin Stones of the world that they're forcing out there, they're having as many bad innings as they're having good innings. And Bobby Miller is still on the disabled list too with the inflammation in his shoulder. So suddenly the Dodgers, despite the payroll and with their great bats, Dodgers, they're going to have to outslug people, I think, to win a pile of games.
What about our guy Gratterall? Remember Gratterall comes off the mound like this, and he's like always firing up and sticking Manny. He's hurt too, right?
Yeah, he's on the deal. He's coming off right now doing this. Pray that I can get better. He just had a setback about a week ago,
right?
And they shut him down for a second time since spring training. I think he's got a lat issue in the back of the shoulder, and those things don't heal by next week. So Dodgers are really struggling. Speaking of the word struggling, disastrous homestand for the Angels. They're now the team that Artie Moreno and John Carpino sanctioned to put on the field. The team their general manager signed all those one-year refugee free agents.
Yeah.
3-9 at Anaheim Stadium. Ooh. Attendance is down more than a third to the start of this season. And they got killed by Minnesota. They got bombed by Minnesota. They got outscored 38-12 in 3 games by Minnesota.
Minnesota?
The Angels' starting rotation is in a state of collapse right now. Outside of Reed Detmers, nobody's getting anybody out. And if that's not enough, your guy, Anthony Rendon.
Oh, yeah.
Now he's got a torn hamstring. He's on the DL for a long period of time. 4th year in a row, he's had a major, major injury. Angel baseball's just a disaster.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, and Rendon is a disgrace. I mean, everything that guy has been through, and now another injury. He's hijacked and jinxed as well. Do you ever see a scenario where the Trout could get traded from Anaheim?
Well, if he stood up and said, enough is enough, I've given you everything, it has not worked, I'm going to give you the opportunity to trade me to a select city, and maybe you can rebuild this with a group of young players you might get back. At that point, no. He just said 2 weeks ago he did his second Pledge of Allegiance, wanting to stay with Angel Baseball, but they just don't have any players right now. And they're pitching. Their starting rotation, aside from Reed Detmers, who's become a legitimate number 1, starting rotation is just a disaster. And now with Rendon hurt, you got Trout, who they can pitch around and then force feed all the other young bats in the batting order, and those guys aren't hitting very well. So this Angel situation is just disastrous. But at this point, no. Trout has not indicated, I want out. If this losing continues at the rate they're losing, maybe he'll say, I've changed my mind. I'm going to try to help you get better. Next baseball topic.
Okay. Oh, going around the major leagues here. MLB notes. Look at these teams here. No bats, big bats.
Let's talk about Philadelphia. Man, you play them, it's like home run derby.
Oh, totally.
I could understand it if all the games are at Citizen Bank Ballpark in Philadelphia, which is a bandbox. But they're doing this on the road. So they played 29 games. John, how about these stats? 37 home runs in 29 games, 80 extra base hits in 29 games this season. Now, granted, dudes do strike out a lot. They got 241 strikeouts in 29 games. I mean, do the math. What's that, 8 per game, kind of?
Yeah, kind of.
So you got that. But they do have Wheeler. They do have Nola. They do have Suarez. They're 3 deep in the bullpen. That's a really good Phillies team. Next topic, Baltimore Orioles. Look at that logo. They sent the kid, the phenom, the number 1 pick, back to AAA. We talked about Jackson Holliday, the son of the legendary Colorado Rockies star Matt Holliday. He was hitting the daylights out of the ball at Norfolk in AAA International League. Came up here, went 2 for 36, 18 strikeouts. So steep learning curve. They're not going to force it. They sent him back to Norfolk, let him continue to hit. He'll figure out the strike zone, etc. Third logo there, Toronto Blue Jays. You have to explain this one to me. When you've got a lineup that includes Vlad Guerrero, Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio, George Springer, and the just-signed Justin Turner, how come you have a .226 team batting average? And how come runners in scoring position, the Jays are hitting .197? How is that possible? Here's what I got in an email from a Blue Jay beat writer. There's been a lot of construction in downtown Toronto around what used to be the Sky Dome. Mm-hmm. And when the roof is open, it changes all the dynamics of Rogers Place. And they played a lot of games with the roof open. They say the wind currents are really weird now because of all these buildings that have gone up in the megaplex around the Sky Dome in Toronto. So that may be an explanation. They just have to close the roof. But how can you have a team of that many proven bats hitting .197 with runners in scoring position? And if you think that's bad, then there's the White Sox. They're 6-22 on the season, and their situation is just not improved. Their team batting average going into Sunday's game, 198. Team batting average,
oh my God.
198. Can you believe that? And, of course, they don't have very much pitching because they sent Dylan Cease to the Padres. They do have Mike Clevenger, and that hasn't helped them very much. So, interesting MLB baseball stats. And John Riley says,
I say the Blue Jays cannot blame the roof on the stadium. I mean, that's just insane. But yeah, there is a lot of construction around there. We were visiting in Toronto a few years ago, and it's right there next to the CN Tower, which is right by the stadium. It's a great venue there in Toronto. But it is weird they're not hitting because that's what we all thought they were going to be. They were going to be this really potent lineup. As far as the Phillies go, those guys are just, I mean, they're everything we thought the Padres were going to be. And they're hitting the bombs. They got all the energy, all the enthusiasm. I mean, tip of the hat to them. They got great pitching. You know, it was just 2 years ago we thought we were like on the cusp of going to the World Series. We lose to Philly, but now we're completely outclassed by them.
They haven't been the same since that series.
No.
And Padres are 6-11 at home. At home, Petco Park.
Yeah.
Home field. No advantage there. So that's the summary on baseball. If you're a baseball fan and you're with us now on our podcast on live stream, hey, join us in Fans Forum. Just shoot us something in the chat box. You got a question, we got an answer. You got an opinion, I want to hear it so we can respond to it. Fans Forum at the end. If you're a Padre fan or a Dodger fan or an Angel fan, feel free to jump on board. Did we watch a lot of football on the weekend? We sure did. Did your eyes fall out of your head by the 7th round on Saturday? Yeah, I could not see straight, could not link a noun and a verb. I couldn't sit in front of my computer and write. Nothing seemed to flow at all. But let's talk about the NFL draft, John.
Yeah, I could see you doing that thing for the whole day. I mean, I could hang for the first round, but maybe not much after that.
Well, if you read the best 15 minutes in sports that I wrote on my website today, what's the volume? How much information is there?
Oh, it's loaded.
I wrote all that. My eyes are about to fall out of my head. Let's talk about who had the best draft in the NFL. I'll take Chicago because of the brilliance of Caleb Williams. A lot of people think he's got a lot of Patrick Mahomes in him, but he's going to be surrounded by a ton of skilled talent, and I think that's the unique thing. If you add that quarterback, and then they went and got Rome Odunze from the University of Washington to go with Keenan Allen, to go with DJ Moore, to go with 3 running backs. Hell, that might be the best offense the Bears have had since whenever.
Yeah.
Chicago's never had a 4,000-yard passing quarterback in the history of the franchise. Never. Going back to the 1920s.
Really?
Yeah. Well, you're a big Bobby Douglas fan. Let me throw it into the ground. Let me throw it in the sidelines. Overthrow the guy. I mean, they've not had a lot of great quarterbacks. Jim McMahon, persona as he wasn't a great quarterback. So they think suddenly that they may have an awful lot of firepower. And when you got Caleb and now you got 3 deep at wide receiver and they got a pass-catching tight end, you got 3 different running backs, and they were pretty productive last year with Justin Fields, suddenly the Bears look different. So I think the Bears had a really great draft. I give Philadelphia a lot of credit. You know, they had a really crap finish to the end of the football season and a lot of unrest, players, coaches, Howie Roseman, the general manager. They made 9 trades during the draft. They traded down, then they traded up, then they traded down with other picks. When they got done, I thought they fixed an awful lot of what was wrong last year, and they got 2 cornerbacks right out of the gate that I think are going to be huge difference makers for Chicago. One kid was one of the best cornerbacks in the country, played at Tiny Toledo in the Mid-American Conference and stayed there. And I've seen video on him, on Mitchell, and can he run, and he is rangy. And so I think the Eagles had themselves a really good draft. They also picked up, what's his name? I got a block from cornerback from the University of Iowa. Very good cover guy, can play corner, can play safety. So I think Philadelphia did really well. I gave Pittsburgh a really high draft grade of an A. They've been trying to fix their offense. Well, obviously they went into the marketplace and they got the 2 quarterbacks. But what they did in about a 14-hour span, they went out and got a starting offensive tackle, Trey Fontenot, from the University of Washington, who's really good. They got Zach Frazier, a beast of an offensive center from West Virginia. They got one of the, quote, other wide receivers from Michigan, Roman Wilson, who caught a bunch of big plays in the Big Ten championship game and obviously the playoffs. And they got a really good linebacker. They think he's an inside version of what T.J. Watt is outside. His name is Peyton Wilson. So suddenly, Pittsburgh, they got probably 4 starters out of that draft, so I was really impressed there. Rams, they had 11 picks. They wound up with a total of 9 players, but what a job they did. I projected they were going to take Florida State's Jared Verse with the first-round pick. They did. Then they traded up in the second round, and they took his teammate, Braden Fisk, massive athletic defensive tackle So they got a pass rusher, and they got an heir apparent replacement for Aaron Donald, who retired. They got edge speed, and they got toughness. And then they went into the running back core, and they added another running back that will be a third down pass catcher. So I think the Rams had a really good draft. I gave the Chargers a letter grade of A. They had distinct holes that needed to be filled. They kept their picks, and they went out, and they got skill players. I think they got themselves probably 3 starters on opening day. I was very impressed with what the Chargers did. Obviously, there's no doubt that they got themselves a stud in Joe Alt. There's no doubt that Ladd McConkey from Georgia is fast. He's tough. He's got great hands. He's a physical blocker downfield. He's going to play a lot, maybe at multi-positions for them. And then, they went out and got a linebacker. The leading tackler at Michigan, Junior Colson, leading tackler 2 years in a row, 297 tackles playing for Jim Harbaugh. So I thought that they did a really, really good job there. And then the Raiders. And the Raiders have got holes lots of places, and they tried hard to trade up, and they could not trade up. And then the Raiders just turned around and kept their picks, and they just kept drafting guys. And I thought getting Brock Bowers adds another ingredient because he is a pass catcher as a tight end. He might not be the best tight end maybe coming into the NFL, but he's good. Is he Kelsey? I don't know. He's probably more athletic than Kelsey. He's not the blocker, the tough guy that Kittle is, but he's still really good. But getting Brock Bowers, I thought, was just huge for the Raiders. And then they went out and got maybe the best center in the country, kid out of the University of Oregon by the name of Johnson. And they've got holes in their offensive line. Then they went and got a right tackle, and they got a hole at right tackle for their third-round pick. So I think Tom Telesco, despite the pressure to go get a quarterback, said, we're going to take the best players we can at the slots we got. And I think they got at least 3 starters. I think they had good hauls. So, John, agree or disagree with me? How I rated them? You're out there in left field. What's your opinion?
Well, just talk about 3 teams, the Bears, the Eagles, and the Raiders.
Yes.
The Bears, I got all these skill guys, but how many times do we see these quarterbacks flame out? Like only about a third of them actually become successful in the NFL. Do you have confidence Caleb Williams is going to be the real deal?
He's done everything, what he did at Oklahoma, what he did at USC in a bad situation. Now, they'll have to refine him a little bit. They're not going to want him to run as much as he ran at Southern Cal because you get your quarterback busted up. But his ability to run and the threat to run just makes him a really dangerous guy. And he's accurate, and he's got a gun for an arm, and he's a firebrand as a leader. So he is the guy. But the most important thing, John, we've talked in the past historically, that what you run into is bad team, really bad team. Carolina Panther bad team. They get Bryce Young and he gets killed. Well, this is not a bad team because Chicago is now traded for 2-star wide receivers. They drafted Cole Kmet, tight end, from a year ago. They're 3 deep at running back. And they got Caleb Williams going to be planted in the middle of all those skilled people. Wow. This is not the Carolina Panthers that he's going to. He's going to the Bears, who've got, I think, a lot of weapons around him. And by the way, the Bears kick your ass on defense. So suddenly Chicago is going to be very, very good in the NFC Central.
Yeah, going to be must-see TV, I think, in the NFC. The Eagles, Roseman always drafts well, doesn't he? Yeah. I mean, did he raid Georgia again this year?
No, he went other places. He went to Toledo. I thought he did a really good job. Now, there's some internal chemistry issues there with that coach and what happened at the end of the season and how really badly they played at the end. And whether guys are distracted, guys didn't play hard, there's going to have to be some maturity that's going to have to be instilled in that locker room. But again, Roseman just continues to stockpile players. He went out and he got 2 of the best college cornerbacks there are. So I thought that was a positive. Your spin on the Chargers and the Rams.
Well, the Chargers, I like the Joe Alt pick. I think that was a terrific move right there. Funny, McConkey as a receiver. Remember there was a McConkey with the Giants?
Phil McConkey, way back then from Navy.
Yeah, was he like in the 80s or 90s? It's just kind of a fun name to say. So good, they got another wide receiver, filled some holes. That sounds great. I'm looking forward to Harbaugh and what he brings to the table. Man, freaking Sean McVay, man, that guy is just always kind of on the fringe, but getting things done, so that's impressive if you're an LA Ram fan. But I want to just, about the Raiders is, remember when John Cooper was here from Ourlads? He said that he was getting vibes that the Raiders were like okay with their quarterback of Aiden O'Connell and Minshew, but they didn't pick a quarterback at all. Didn't that surprise you in the first round?
No, because they tried, and I was told by a different NFL player personnel guy, one of the reasons there were few trades at the top outside of what the Vikings did is that the price to go up to the top three, way too steep. And the teams that were trading back, geez, if I'm going to go from 3 to 12 or 3 to 15, that's too far a drop. Mm-hmm. So the mechanics of the deals didn't really work out. The Vikings only traded one of their number ones up a couple slots just to get the quarterback that they wanted in getting J.J. McCarthy. So that's why everybody projected there were going to be a hell of a lot of deals, but price to get up there was way too steep. Price to length you had to drop down if you made the trade too far. And there were some stupid things that happened. The Chargers confirmed New England called them on the clock and offered 3 for 5. Or New England offered 3, give us Justin Herbert. Chargers are not
Justin Herbert.
Not going to do that. And then Minnesota called them at the last minute and said, we're willing to go to 5, or would you be willing to trade us Justin Herbert? And we'll give you our 11 and 23. Chargers said, no, not trading Justin Herbert. Not going to create another hole, a massive hole, a crater on a roster that's already got a lot of holes on it.
Yeah, that's the whole reason Harbaugh's here.
That's right. So that's where we are. So that was the good draft. Let's talk about the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, look at these teams. The Falcons got to be number one to discuss.
Atlanta has called 2 press conferences since they did this, and they've not said anything that makes any sense. Atlanta needed pass rushers. Atlanta needs defense. And Atlanta, instead, at 8, reached and took Michael Penix. There's no explanation in the world that I've heard that explained why would you do that after you gave Kirk Cousins a $100 million guaranteed contract for at least the next 4 years, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Why would you want Michael Penix to sit? And Michael Penix, if he sits 4 years as Cousins plays out his contract, he'll be then a 28-year-old rookie. And you got no bloody defense. I mean, there were pass rushers all over the place that Atlanta could have had at 8. Didn't do it. So I give them the worst draft of all. In Dallas, they got bad salary cap issues, but they got holes on their roster too. They desperately needed a running back, and they bypassed all of them, including Jonathan Brooks at Texas, who they met with last Friday and sent him through another physical. And he, of course, had the major knee injury, even though he did have a 1,000-yard season before he got hurt at midseasons. I just didn't like what Dallas did. Though Dallas did get an offensive tackle, and they've had a lot of injury and age issues at offensive tackle. And Ty Guyton coming in the door is probably going to play some significant football. But they needed a running back. They still don't have a running back, although they're about to sign Ezekiel Elliott to a 1-year contract to bring him back. Arizona, it's kind of hard to sit here and criticize a team that got Marvin Harrison because that guy is a big-time player. But a wide receiver doesn't change your franchise. It'll be nice for Kyler Murray to have that type of talent to get the ball, too. But if they could have traded out a 4 and gotten three significant picks, that's 3 potential starters rather than just Marvin Harrison. Mm-hmm. And even though Arizona had a lot of picks at the back end of the draft, I just don't think they handled this thing correctly. They could have gone down a slot or 2 and then maybe traded down again. They could have wound up with two first-round picks and bunches in the second and third round, and they didn't. In Cincinnati, I say poor Joe Burrow. The Bengals just keep doing this. I don't understand why the Bengals do this, but Cincinnati drafted an offensive tackle who's got weight issues, maturity issues, and has only started 8 games in college football. His name's Alois Mims out of Georgia. That was their number 1 pick. I mean, we're talking big project.
Yeah.
Big project. And that's the guy that's supposed to protect your big money quarterback, Joe Burrows. So that's an issue. And then they drafted a defensive player who's got some issues too. So I didn't like anything I saw from the Cincinnati situation. And the Jets They got Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think they got difference makers with their draft early on. They got a wide receiver, Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky, but that's 1AA football. That's a far ways away. They tried to trade up from where they were at 10, and they didn't do that. They did get an offensive lineman, which is going to help them some, but I just didn't think they got the right guys because they have such a shorter window with Aaron Rodgers to be great. So those are the ones I didn't think had good drafts. So, John, you were sitting there. Did you spill your coffee when Atlanta took Michael Penix at 8?
Yeah, and I love Michael Penix, and I want him to be successful. But, yeah, after getting Cousins, I mean, did Atlanta even talk to Cousins at any time telling him they were considering taking not Vic, but Penix?
No, some clubs will alert the guy early. I don't think they alerted him till right till the pick was being made because I think they knew what the reaction was going to be. We're going to talk about the reaction in just a second. But this makes no sense. I mean, the elite pass rusher was out of Alabama, and he was on the board at 8, and he would have helped fix a poor defense. You don't need Michael Penix to sit there and learn for 3 years or 4 years.
Yeah.
Even if there's some private concern that maybe Cousins won't come back from this torn Achilles, although doctors say he's fine and he's going to do all the OTAs. Did they draft him as an insurance policy? Well, maybe you could have drafted him later, but not at number 8 when you got all these holes on your defense and you bypass the best pass rusher or 2 best pass rushers that were out there, the kid from Alabama and the kid that the Rams got from Florida State. Makes no sense to me. And like I said, they've held 2 press conferences, and anything I've watched one of them with Raheem Morris, the coach. Anything that's coming out of his mouth, I still don't understand the rationale because he's not telling us the rationale.
Yeah, and there's got to be something more going on here. I wonder if like the owner kind of came in and made that pick on their behalf. It's just something irrational going on in Atlanta.
Yeah. So that's where we are. You're an NFL football fan. Give us your thoughts. Who do you think had the best draft? Who had the worst draft? NFL football fan, Charger fan, like their draft? Rams fan, jump in to the Fans Forum chat box and give us your opinion as to what you saw. Because when we're done here, we want to hear what you've got to say in Fans Forum. John, we got a couple of other football items here we want to discuss.
Okay, so here's the Kirk Cousins thing I think that you were hinting at.
Okay, names in the news around the National Football League. Kirk Cousins' only statement hours after the draft was, why didn't you get us players who can help us this week, this coming season? That's a big issue. Kirk Cousins dissatisfied that Atlanta didn't go get more skill people or did not go get more people on defense. They got a developmental quarterback. Big story out of San Francisco. This thing's got legs. The 49ers have salary cap issues, monster cap issues because they've got to extend out, obviously, Brock Purdy. Their salary cap issue figures are phenomenal with Christian McCaffrey and with the tight end. They got an issue with their receivers now. Brandon Ayuk's in the last year of his contract. Teams called on him. They like Ayuk. DEEBO Samuels has got 2 more years and about $45 million left on his deal. They're shopping DEEBO. They've evidently decided they'd rather have Ayuk rather than DEEBO Samuels. Injuries may come into play. They almost had a deal with Buffalo at the last minute. Buffalo backed away, did not want to trade the first-round pick for DEEBO Samuels. But the story out of San Francisco is somebody's leaving, and it's probably going to be DEEBO, who's a multi-position guy but has had multiple injuries 2 years running. And we talked about the Justin Herbert story. Say what? Buffalo, New England, Minnesota called the Chargers when they're on the clock, and I said, would you trade Justin Herbert for a pick right now? I've heard a lot of stupid things. Never heard anything like that. Chargers said, obviously, no, we're not doing that. And the other is the ongoing saga with the Kansas City Chiefs. Clark Hunt said yesterday, after the draft completed, that the Chiefs are going to seriously evaluate looking across the state line. It's only 8 miles from downtown Kansas City, Missouri, looking across the state line out to Kansas City, Kansas, to get a football stadium built. This in the aftermath of the voters revolting and saying, no, we're not going to give you $800 million in a sales tax to help you renovate Arrowhead Stadium. Now, they've still got 6 years left on their Arrowhead lease, but in 6 years window, you can make a deal across the state line to build a stadium. So somewhere down the road, we might be doing this podcast talking about the Kansas City, Kansas Chiefs leaving Arrowhead Stadium because they don't know how to come up with the money, and they're willing to put a whole pile of their own money into the renovation. But they wanted the sales tax that was already in place extended so that they could use that revenue to help pay for the renovation. They're going to pay for half the renovation, but the voters in Kansas City said no. So it might be the Kansas City, Kansas Chiefs going forward. So, John, do you want to respond to Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, the Kirk Cousins thing is just bananas. I mean, I'm still having a hard time digesting that. But let's talk a little bit about the stadium. For the Chiefs, didn't they just redo Arrowhead not too long ago? Wasn't it like rebuilt or refurbished?
It's been renovated twice. The last time was in, I want to say, 2002. That's when I was in there. Mm-hmm. It was like a $245 million renovation. It was fabulous. But that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
If not more. And the fact that they're willing, Clark Hunt's willing to put half of his money into this renovation pot in addition to the continuation of the sales tax. And the people said no.
I wonder if the people in Kansas are willing to pay. You think so? Is there like a sales tax over there in the other state now?
Well, from what I gather, there are plans to help finance. Either they're going to build a stadium for the Kansas City Royals or they might build a stadium for the Kansas City Chiefs. Mm-hmm. Somebody, I would bet, is going to wind up on the other side of the state line.
You know what I really like about Arrowhead, and it's just kind of a weird thing, is their big screen is in the shape of an oval, like a football kind of. And that always kind of caught my attention, and it's been like that forever, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, a lot of that stadium was constructed for the AFL Kansas City Chiefs. Mm-hmm. And then what they did was they added skyboxes, and then they raised the skyboxes, raised the seating above the skyboxes, and put a second layer of skyboxes there. And then they did stuff at both ends. They enclosed the stadium. It's a great venue. It's a bowl. I mean, you are sitting and you are looking right down and you are on top of the field. It's a very, very unique football-only venue.
You're looking live at Kansas City. You know, the other thing about Herbert is amazing. Imagine trading Herbert with the clock ticking in the draft and having to make an impulse decision like that. I wonder if New England was hoping to maybe get the Chargers off guard or something.
Could be, but we all know what that young man has accomplished in that period of time. For 4 years now with the Bolts, statistically, without a good team around him or with a team that's always been hurt. Whether he's losing all of his receivers, 1 year he lost all of his offensive linemen, another year, his whole defensive line was a disaster. No, Chargers say no. Yeah, and you wouldn't do a deal like that in the snap of the fingers. Buffalo says, or New England says, we'll trade you 3, give us Justin Herbert. So give the Chargers 3 and 5. It's got to be more than that.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to give me 3? You want to give me your second round pick? You want to give me next year's number 1? Maybe you want to give me 3 number 1s? Those are the kind of prices you pay for a bright young quarterback that's under a long-term contract that's been very successful.
Yeah, well, I think even if they offered the mother load, you still don't take it because it's so hard to get a good quarterback, and you finally got one, and you have to roll the dice on, maybe hoping Bo Nix is your savior.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I don't think I've heard anything like that just happening because they had no conversations with New England at all. All of a sudden, New England called you when you're on the clock. It was, 10 minutes, 12 minutes between draft picks?
Something like that, yeah.
No, can't do that. Okay, we get to halftime. You got opinions about the topics we've just put on the table, you need to jump into the chat box right now. Fans Forum chat box is open. Halftime. Our podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. 9 stores to serve you in San Diego. I bought windows from them. He bought a front door from them. He's in the middle of renovations and projects. You got some spare time, you might come over here and help him move boxes out of his family room so he can put decking in there. You got projects. These guys have the supplies. These guys have the answers. These guys have the creative juice to help you. It's our best friend, DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. And our podcast also brought to you by North County Eye Centers of Poway and Escondido. We're all going to need help with our eyes. We're all going to need vision tests. Sometimes we may need new glasses, sometimes new contacts, or you want to try contact lenses. But there's another side of eye care. There are significant things that can happen as we age. It could be glaucoma. It could be cataracts. It could be pink eye. It could be dry eye. If you have significant eye problems, think about North County Eye Center. North County Eye Center, Poway and Escondido. They've been in business serving people in the North County since the 1970s. And as we go to the second half of our Monday Bonus podcast, we welcome in everybody from our O Canada network out of Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us, and you're invited to join us too on Fans Forum. John, for everybody that's with us on live stream, a lot of people just jump into the program. They hear Fans Forum. They don't quite understand what it is, so explain yourself.
Okay. So, yeah, if you've got a question or comment about anything in the world of sports, now's your chance to talk to Lee Hacksaw Hamilton about it. It's just like sports talk radio. Instead of a phone, we're using the chat line. So if you've got a question or comment, drop your take in the live chat on Facebook, YouTube, or X. It appears here on our screen. We'll get you involved in Fans Forum at the conclusion of Hacksaw's headlines.
And I want you to check my website every morning. I write on it. You won't believe the volume of information if you're an NFL fan that I wrote. You won't believe my summary capsules on what's happened in baseball, what's gone on in the NBA, the NHL playoffs. I write about this stuff every day. Just go to that website. When we're done with this live stream podcast today, punch up the website. Just take a gander at how much data there is. LeeHacksawHamilton.com. And by the way, there's an orange box right on the homepage. Fill out that orange box and then become part of our email team, become part of Hacksaw's Insiders Group. It's all free. It's all for you. Want you to share, tell all your friends what we're doing, and want you to subscribe. So every time we put something up on the YouTube channel, you will get the alerts. And we do work long hours, and sometimes stuff pops up at 2 o'clock in the morning. You're going to ding, ding. That'll be us on the YouTube channel alerting you. So make sure you subscribe to that. John, let's move on. We've got other topics on the table. There are other games going on.
Yeah, the NBA playoffs have been incredible, and the Lakers are just barely hanging on by a thread.
Lakers down 3-0. Unbelievable effort. Beat Denver at home. So they're down 3-1. Later Monday night, they play in Denver again. There's been no quit in LeBron James, no quit at all in Anthony Davis, but they need other people to step up with consistency. And this tonight, I think, is going to be a test of wills because the Lakers scored 72 points in the paint in beating Denver on Saturday. 72. And that's just not AD. That's LeBron going to the hole, D'Angelo Russell going to the hole, guys crossing the lanes, making buckets. There's no doubt in my mind Denver's going to stand up and say, you're coming into this paint, you're going to get knocked down. And Denver may use some fouls along the way. It is fascinating, though, because you look at Denver. Denver looks like a tired team. Nikola Jokic just is huffing and puffing. Now, granted, he's big body, and he works hard, and he does run the court a lot. I think this game is going to swirl around what Murray does offensively, what Porter does offensively, what they get done with the Denver guards. If those guys come out blazing, I don't see how the Lakers are going to keep up with them. Clippers, no Kawhi. The season would not end. James Harden would not allow it to end. Paul George would not allow it to end. Clippers won against Dallas, and they outgunned them. Clippers led by 31 in the first half. Now, Dallas came back, tied the game, took the lead with just 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and then James Harden took over. James Harden, playing by himself almost because there was no Kawhi Leonard, hit 6 driving layups in traffic in the fourth quarter alone, and that was the difference to the game. Harden and Paul George combined for 66. They each scored 33 points in the game. They withstood Kyrie Irving's 40. Luka Doncic, he looks gassed, and he's got a bruise on his knee, and he's just not the same player right now. But so the Clippers are still alive, and maybe they think that they're back into this thing. It's 2-2, could have been 3-1 had they not been able to survive the loss of Kawhi Leonard. But I just don't think Kawhi is going to be there and can be trusted just because his knee inflammation after 2 appearances has shown up again.
Well, I think the Lakers are going to probably be done after one more game. I think they put everything on the table to win Game 4, and after that, I think they're going to be done. The Clippers game against the Mavs was very entertaining, especially at that big lead, and it kept getting smaller and narrower. I was impressed with Harden, and it wasn't just the layups; it were the floaters in the lane that were just so accurate. It was incredible. Do you think there's any chance Kawhi can come back in this series? Are we going to see him again?
I don't think so. I mean, he played 35 minutes first game. I think the second game he played 25, and then boom, he's got all the swelling in the knee again. There's something going on in there. I don't know if it's bone spur. I don't know if there's something with the meniscus, and that this is the knee that's had the 2 major surgeries. I just think there's a wear and tear factor. I think he's at 200,000 miles on that leg, and it may be that he's going to need an entire offseason to get healthy, but this thing keeps reoccurring.
Yeah, I'm hoping he comes back. I'm all in on the Clippers. But I'll tell you what, Doncic, a great player. I mean, by the way, Kyrie Irving was unbelievable in that game. But Doncic was just bitching and moaning to the refs all game. Did you notice that?
Yeah, he was getting banged a lot. And he wasn't able to play the kind of defense he played because he's got something. It's either a bruised knee or he might have hyperextended it. He just doesn't look right in terms of getting up and down the floor. Still a really good offensive talent. But if Luka can't be Luka as we know him to be, average 33 points a game during the regular season, then it's Kyrie against the world. And as brilliant as he is, I don't know that he can do it all by himself.
Yeah, Luka is just an interesting player. His body type is a little bit different than most NBA players. He's not like a chiseled Adonis or anything like that. And he doesn't seem like he's that fast, but he is so darn effective. I mean, it's a puzzle trying to understand how that guy plays.
Yeah. So we'll see where it goes. The Lakers season could be over on Monday night. Clippers are, granted, now it's a best of 3 series, but if there's no Kyrie, can you expect PG and JH, Harden and George, to put those kind of numbers up on the board every game?
Yeah, well, stranger things have happened.
Speaking of strange things, let's talk NHL hockey.
Yeah, these playoffs are red hot. How are your Leafs doing, Lee?
Leaf season is almost over. It is shocking. First of all, let's talk about the LA Kings. What I saw them do Sunday night, I've never seen them play with that level of focus, that level of intensity, that level of speed, that level of physicality. And all it got them was a 1-0 loss to Edmonton. Edmonton's goaltender stood on his head at the end of the game. The Kings just could not put the puck in the net. And the Kings historically have really had trouble controlling Connor McDavid, Zach Hyman, and Leon Draisaitl. David Rittich, who started in goal, a bit of a surprise in place of the beleaguered Cam Talbot. He hung in there. He played really well. It'll be interesting to see going back to Edmonton whether they stay with Rittich or they go back to Cam Talbot. It was the most complete game I've seen the Kings play in a long period of time. John, get this. The Kings outshot Edmonton. Edmonton with all that firepower.
Yeah.
They outshot them 33-12, and they lost. They outhit them. They played the body. They finished every bloody check they made. They outhit them 48-25, and they lost 1-0. I mean, Edmonton is really, really good. So we got that. Toronto, massive trouble. They lose 2 home games to Boston. They're now down 3-1, and it's even worse. Austin Matthews, who scored 69 goals during the season, has got a viral infection. He's been sick for the better part of a week. They don't think he's going to play in this next game in Boston. And then on top of that, William Nylander, their 40-goal scorer, has been plagued by migraines. That's why he didn't play the first couple of 3 games of the series. So if the Leafs go into Boston without 108 goals, without what Austin Matthews and Nylander does, how are they going to hold up? How are they going to survive? Looks like they're in trouble. And one other team that's in trouble is Nashville. Nashville had a big lead on Vancouver on Sunday afternoon, and the Vancouver Canucks scored 3 goals in 3 minutes and 50 seconds. The last 2 at the end of the third period that tie it, they scored a minute into overtime. They won it. 3 goals in 3 minutes and 50 seconds in the other guy's building. I mean, I've never heard the people in that barn go so silent so quick. And now Vancouver's coming home with the series up 3-1. And by the way, Vancouver lost its first goaltender, Thatcher Demko, torn ACL after game 1. They lost their second goaltender, Casey DeSmith, with a neck issue. Suddenly, they played their third-string goaltender, who was in the American Hockey League virtually all year, and he stoned those guys.
Wow.
So Vancouver just continues to grind people, and now they won with a third-string goaltender. You just hardly ever see that in postseason play. So those are some of the marquee storylines in the NHL.
Well, so is it typical that an NHL team will only carry 2 keepers?
You carry 2, you can bring up a third from your minor league affiliate, but he only gets to play if the first 2 are hurt.
Right, but you can't have the third guy hanging around on the bench, can you?
No, he's not on the bench, but he could be dressed in the tunnel or dressed in the dressing room in case there's an injury, but you can't use him.
So who do you think this is all going to come down to? Stanley Cup Finals. Who are you predicting?
Nobody's paying any attention to the East Coast, but Buffalo said Boston is so big they just beat your brains out, wear you out. And nobody, maybe because we never see them out here on the left coast, New York Rangers have got guns everywhere. They got firepower everywhere. Trocheck he's had a very good NHL playoff series. They are 3 deep with snipers, and Shesterkin, the Russian goaltender, looks superb, as in a trophy type superb. So the Rangers you need to pay attention to what the Rangers in Boston have become. I was hoping, maybe because I'm a hockey purist, it'd be an all-Canada final, but the second round's going to be just as good as the first round.
So how are our boys in Winnipeg doing?
They've stopped scoring goals, and they're down 3-1, and they might be on the golf course by the weekend. So you're a hockey fan, feel free to jump on board. Fans Forum chat box is open. Couple of other stories here, John.
Okay, yeah, let's go back to the high-speed sports wire. Look at these names on the list.
Let's start with what just happened this morning. CBS NFL Today, the great pregame show, postgame show, Sunday's NFL, fired Phil Simms and Boomer Esiason. Not renewing their contracts just kind of really stuns me. They were popular figures. They're both New York-based. They're big magnets in terms of attention and TV audiences. They're hiring Matt Ryan, the former NFL quarterback in Atlanta, who debuted last year in a little bit of studio work. He was okay, but I didn't think it was dynamic. And they brought back Bill Cowher. And as much as I like Bill Cowher and respect Bill Cowher and is a Steeler, he's awful full of coach speak. Yes. I just don't understand them hitting the eject buttons. Phil Simms had been there 26 years. Boomer's been there 22. Wow. And they're both smart guys. And, I mean, what they say carries value because they've been there, done that. So I am shocked at what CBS Sports just did. Let's talk about this Larry Nassar situation. The background on him, former athletic trainer at Michigan State, former trainer of the U.S. Women's Olympic Gymnastics team. He was the one that was convicted on all those sexual assault charges, things he did to female athletes while, quote, he was examining them. Well, the Department of Justice has just settled a massive lawsuit awarding $139 million to 103 female athletes on the Olympic team because when the information leaked out that Nassar might be doing something wrong with these women, the FBI took a year before they got around to investigating it. And the Department of Justice says, we were wrong. So they have awarded $139 million. This comes on top of the USOC awarding $308 million to the Olympic Gymnastics, on top of Michigan State awarding $300 million to its own athletes who were vandalized, breached, assaulted by Dr. Larry Nassar, who's serving 60 years in prison. It does not bring back peace of mind to Simone Biles and all the other great female athletes who suffered at the hands of Dr. Larry Nassar, but it's just a terrible story. One other story in soccer, looking for soccer fan to join us. I know there's soccer fans out there. This is weird. English Premier League has been approached to bring some of their regular season games to the U.S. and play them on a rotating tour.
Yeah.
Now, they're not saying we're going to bring Manchester City or Liverpool or United or Hotspur. Those aren't the ones that be coming. It'd be the ones at the bottom of the table, a.k.a. standings. But the English Premier League says our games are not for sale. We're not going to do that. We're not going to send regular season games and teams to play in the States. Leave our game the way our game is. We don't want to take away home dates from Newcastle United or whomever. That's not what they're saying in Spain. Spain's La Liga, which is their first division league, got financial problems. Salary structure's gone out of control in Spain. Spain is negotiating with guess who? Saudi Arabia. To take La Liga games, Barcelona, Madrid, take them and position them to play in Saudi Arabia for a big payday.
Interesting.
And, of course, all that money would then go into the pool and be split amongst all the other teams, some of whom are having real financial trouble. So, Spain, it may be that FC Barcelona, Real Madrid might lose some home games because La Liga would sell them to the Saudis to let them play over there in Riyadh or wherever. That's amazing. So, John, topics on the table. Like or dislike Phil and Boomer?
First of all, those two guys are almost the same guy.
Yeah.
They're both quarterbacks from the same era, both with blonde hair. And Phil Simms always is kind of a dud to me. I mean, Boomer I've always liked more than Phil. But I think this is a good thing for CBS. Get some young guys in there. It's a new generation. I mean, most young people weren't even alive when Boomer Esiason and Phil Simms were in the Super Bowl back in the 80s. So I think this is a good move. It is a shocker for sure. But Esiason's got so many other things going on. He's got podcasts and TV shows and endorsements. I don't think Phil's quite as busy.
Yeah, Phil does a lot of stuff. And Boomer, he does a morning show on WFAN in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, he works a lot, and he's everywhere.
And he's good at what he does. And Cowher, to me, is always kind of not just coach speak, but that rough, gruff, old school coach mentality. I mean, there's a lot of other coaches that it'd be fun to have in there as well. But again, a lot of these sets, especially for CBS and for Fox, usually are more conservative in who they select for those studio slots.
I mean, if you were going to blow NFL guys out, would you not make a contact with Belichick? I was told that Belichick did something on draft day with Pat McAfee in the podcast, and it was really dynamic, really different.
Really?
Now, would you not go after Belichick if you're going to take these guys out?
Yeah, not a bad idea. But what about Tom Brady? Isn't he coming?
He's coming to Fox.
Okay, but he's going to be a color guy, not a studio guy.
Right.
And that's going to bump the other guy out. What's his name?
The tight end from Carolina.
Yeah, so maybe he can go into the studio as well. What's that?
No, he's going down. He's going to be part of the second play-by-play team.
Okay, what's his name again? Olsen, right?
Yeah, Greg Olsen.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yes.
I mean, so I still have no idea what we're going to get from Tom Brady.
No.
But just think about all the old-time hosts that were there forever, like Brent Musburger and Jimmy the Greek, all those guys. They were just like... They were pillars in our sports life back in the 70s, weren't they?
Yeah, but knowing John Riley, get him out of here.
Yeah, well,
John doesn't care about tradition and accomplishment.
No, you got to turn the page sometime. Invite some of the young folks in. A lot of times they're also strategically selecting people from certain demographic groups to try to expand the game. And speaking of expanding the game, I think it's a great idea for La Liga and for the EPL to come to America, go to Saudi Arabia. The NFL has proven that it works. MLB did it in Korea and elsewhere, and it works well. I think it's a super thing to make the sport more global. And again, it brings people together rather than having everyone in separate leagues and separate territories. So I say more of it. I think the EPL is short-sighted.
Except that they don't want to send Manchester City and Erling Haaland their 70-goal scorer. They don't want to send them stateside. Well, they want to keep those games in front of their fans. But they'll send you the last place team that's about to get relegated.
Well, the NFL does the same thing. They send them the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, I mean, that's still okay. So I say bring it on. I want more soccer in America.
Okay, it is time for Fans Forum, our podcast brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center Stores, 9 locations to serve you in San Diego, and by North County Eye Center, Poway and Escondido. John, you got a few thousand people here that want to make comments. Go ahead, just go to the top of the board. Let's make a run through and see what the fans have got to say.
Oh my God. Okay, here. Let's go here to the top of the board. Scrolling. Okay, let's go to Steve. And he goes, hey, good afternoon, guys. What do you think of the Chargers draft? I thought they did pretty darn well.
Hey, I did a draft report card on my website, One Man's Opinion column today. You should read the thing when this live stream is over. I give them a letter grade of A. I think they drafted 4 guys that could all be starters on opening day. Now, they'll all be young guys, too. And the question is, how fast do these young guys develop? And I think they had a good draft, but then they had a fair amount of high draft picks, and this was a very deep draft. So I gave them an A. I gave the Rams an A.
Well, who are the starters? I mean, Joe Alt and then the McConkey kid will probably start, right?
Yeah, and then the linebacker for Michigan, Colson, is going to be a starter.
Okay.
And then they drafted a defensive tackle from Alabama who had come off a neck injury, had a really good bounce-back season last year. I bet he's going to be in the rotation to be a defensive starter because the Chargers lost some defensive tackles.
Wow, 4 starters. That's pretty good.
Exactly. Now, how good they all hold up being kids remains to be seen. Next question.
Next question. Okay, let's go here to Angel. Angel says, Padres just ran into a hot Phillies and still early. The Padres should be okay once Darvish and Musgrove are back to form.
But we don't know that back to form, whether that's possible. We'll find out whether Darvish gets the ball on Tuesday, gets the ball on Thursday, whether it's the reoccurrence of the neck issue. I asked the question in my Saturday morning sports package on KUSI that they got on the air. Joe Musgrove, do we need to give him an extra day's rest? Does he need more time to recover? He's given up a lot of home runs. Like I said, he's made 7 starts. 4 of the 7 he's gotten blasted. His ERA in those 4 games is 11.75. He's given up a lot of home runs. So I just don't think we can use the phrase back in form for those two. And now we got the Michael King home run derby situation, too. He's given up 10 home runs in 6 starts, that's pretty significant, on top of giving up a lot of hits and walking a lot of batters.
Remember Musgrove thought that he could come back at the end of last year? And he says maybe not as a starter, maybe in the bullpen role. But there's just no way. I mean, considering how he's doing now, I mean, something still isn't right. But you know who is pitching well for the Padres is Adrian Morejon. Yep. And he's been very well. So if they have to put, Darvish or Musgrove back on the DL, he could slide right in.
Yeah, I don't know how many innings you get out of him, but his role... He's pitched very well in his role. He spent the offseason realigning his mechanics with his body and his arm slot, and so far, so good. Now, whether that equates to being able to be a starter and do it for 5 or 6 innings rather than be a 2-inning relief guy remains to be seen. But you're correct. This is a different Adrian Morejon right now.
Yeah, looking forward to getting some return on investment there. Let's go to comment. He says, Winnipeg Jet fans are sad, Hacksaw. Give us some hope.
Well, I'm disappointed they haven't been able to score, because they flourished at the end of the season. A lot of the role players that they traded for were pot and goals, and it's just kind of all disappeared. But let's understand, Colorado is deep. Colorado's got firepower. Colorado's got great goaltending. Winning in Denver is really hard. So, yeah, if they're going to be one and done, I'm going to be disappointed because the way they finished up the season, they have 50 wins, I think. That was pretty impressive, but boy, their goal scorers just have kind of disappeared on them in the postseason. They're not the only ones. There's going to be a bunch of people disappointed by probably Wednesday of this week.
Well, the fans there are just so fired up, aren't they?
Oh.
I mean, I just love it. I mean, every time you see them in the arena and it's the whiteout and the fans are outdoors following the team, I mean, putting Winnipeg on the map, right?
Yeah. I would hope fans would sell out that building. There've been issues about the cost of tickets. There've been issues that the fans have not responded more recently in the last year. I mean, this is your franchise. This franchise has a great history to it, so I'd hope Winnipeg Jet fans will just kind of rally back and support the team. And I think that management did a pretty good job finding people who could come in and play for them. But all of a sudden we got to postseason. Postseason's just another level up in terms of intensity. Some of the goal scorers have gone away, and you get guys nicked. And when you're playing every other night, suddenly if a guy gets hurt, it's really tough. But Winnipeg, support the Jets.
Right on. Okay, let's keep going here. We'll go down the list. Let's go here to, what does that say? Eagle Lion. He says, Seattle hasn't set the world on fire the past 3 years, which is where the Chicago Bears offensive coordinator comes from.
Well, it's a change into the guard. The era of Pete Carroll, and that was fairly successful, is now gone. The quarterback issue has never really ever been solved. They've had all these running backs that have gone in there and have been hurt virtually nonstop. Granted, they do have 3 deep at wide receiver, but you got to have a quarterback who can get the football to them. So I mean, they gave Geno Smith the extension to stay, and Geno's grown as a quarterback. But is Geno a big difference maker? Is the upper echelon that's going to elevate you? And, the Legion of Doom, they all got old and they all left. The Richard Sherman era, boy, that's a long time in your rearview mirror now. So a lot of work to be done. I guess I'm really surprised that they emotionally reached the end of the road with Pete Carroll, because I just think he was a dynamic leader, and they drafted a lot of players that he wanted that fit his system, and it kind of fell apart at the end.
Do you know much about this offensive coordinator he's talking about? I mean, what kind of an offense? Because the Seattle offense was never very dynamic, was it?
Well, it was back in the day when Russell Wilson had come from Minnesota. It was really good. They did get to the Super Bowl, and they were upper echelon in the NFC. You can have all the X's and O's you want in the world, but, if you don't have a good offensive line, and there were chunks of years they did not, and then you had the turnover at quarterback where Geno was not Russell. And then they went through so many running backs. We thought Rashad Penny was going to be a star up there, and he averaged 5 yards a carry. He's the kid from San Diego State. He could not stay on the field. He was hurt all the time and a wide variety of injuries in game. It wasn't that he was out of shape. He calf, broken wrist, things like that. So they've just not had all the components. They got the wide receivers who've been able to stay on the field, but everything else around them has been a turnover. And then the Legion of Doom got old, and you got to rebuild all that almost all at once. It's a real tough haul.
I wonder who called the play in that Seattle-New England Super Bowl right there on the goal line, that pass. That was just a disaster, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm trying to think, well, Pete Carroll put it on me, but I don't know.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Sam Crow. He says, Jerry thinks Zeke will help the running back problem.
Well, he's not the back that he was before. I mean, he went to New England, and I thought the fact that they run the football a lot with the Patriots, I thought Belichick will squeeze the last ounce of energy out of him. Never, ever happened. He actually never, ever won the starting job. I don't know. He's coming in there on a minimal contract, so he's coming in to probably be a part-time running back, but that's still, under Mike McCarthy, that's going to be a throw-the-football-first offense.
You didn't like the Cowboy draft.
They had a desperate need at running back. When we were here last Thursday, I would have bet my mortgage they would have taken Jonathan Brooks from Texas, because that was a big-time stud running back before he had the knee injury right at the end of the season. And he's rehabbed, and they think he'll be ready for opening day, but they did not take him. Carolina wound up taking him to put in the backfield with Bryce Young. But, they've had a lot of injuries in the offensive front. They've lost a couple of 3 players. Tyron Smith is finally gone, and he was their anchor at left tackle, the ex-USC Trojan for a decade. Their center, whom they drafted, is gone. So they've had to fill in some slots there. I trust the Cowboys drafts because they don't fail with their draft picks, but I just said, don't you need to run the football to help Dak? Jonathan Brooks would have been the right guy to run the football to help Dak. Didn't happen.
Why do the Cowboys always seem to choke in the playoffs? Is Dak Prescott really a Super Bowl quarterback, do you think?
He's had a good bounce back 2 years. Prior to that, there was some substandard season or two in there. But it's all predicated on what you're around. If all your wide receivers are hurt, then what do you got? If your offensive line's hurt, you might have Dak Prescott, but if they can't protect him, it's not the same. And then, obviously, Zeke looked like he hit the finish line. He wasn't the power back he was. And they had Tony Pollard. Then Tony Pollard leaves as an unsigned, unrestricted free agent. So it's not always on the quarterback, although he's the focal point of the offense. It's what's going on around that quarterback.
Yeah, the Dallas has had a lot of great quarterbacks in the day. Okay, here's a comment from Joey. He says, Hacksaw, you know all about Tom Telesco. You know I'm a Raider fan. Tell me how you think he did.
Yeah, I gave him a letter grade of A. Joe, when we're done with this podcast in a couple of minutes, you go to my website and read my draft report card. It's on my One Man's Opinion column page. Read my draft report card. They had needs. They got players. So I think the Raiders, top to bottom, at least through the first 4 picks, I thought they drafted really, really well, and they filled holes that they had to get filled. I mean, that tight end's pretty good. You get Brock Bowers to go with Devontae Adams and the receiver on the other side, the kid that came from New England. All of a sudden, that's pretty good. Now, you might have a black hole at running back because there's no Josh Jacobs anymore. That's an issue. How are you going to fill that in? But they had a lot of needs, and I think that Telesco did a decent job getting it. And he didn't trade the whole volume of draft picks in the future away to try to get Jaden Daniels. The price was way too steep.
Well, you said that Telesco kind of was a more conservative GM with the Chargers.
Yeah.
Do you think he changed his behavior for this draft with the Raiders?
No, he didn't make a ton of trades. He didn't do a massive trade up. And I don't think he'd ever traded back. And he didn't do that either, at least in the top 4 rounds. So, I mean, I think they helped themselves. They got themselves a really good offensive center. They got themselves a right tackle. They got Brock Bowers. And they got the defensive lineman, too. So, good grade. But Raider fan, if you can read, if you have a laptop in jail, just go to my website and read my One Man's Opinion column today. It's right there posted. I'll tell you who did well and why, and who did not do well and why.
Yeah, Joey had another interesting follow-up comment. He says, if your partner ever wants a day off, I'll be glad to fill in for the day for free. Love the show. Keep it up, guys.
Either that, or if he decides to get rid of this tradition in the anchor's chair, you might be getting a call to come replace me. Go ahead. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, let's move on here. Let's go to Roberto, and he says, Lee, do you like Profar batting leadoff going forward?
A lot of energy, gets walks, sprays the ball, puts it in play, occasional home run. Yeah, at this point, because of veteran, although I thought maybe Jackson Merrill. Jackson's cooled off a little bit, but Jackson Merrill puts the ball in play too. So either one of those two. I just don't think Xander's the leadoff hitter. And, Profar just brings a lot of energy to the plate, and if dude gets on first base, then things happen. So I'd like it.
Yeah, well, Xander even admits that he's kind of sucking right now. So, yeah, Profar, remember we were debating that. Merrill, Profar, Ha-Seong Kim. Profar has just been terrific. Last year when he was leading off, and he did great yesterday. So hopefully more of that. Get some guys on base.
And, of course, my opinion is let's enjoy what we're getting from Profar right now because he is a lifer 246 hitter.
Yeah, he is. But he's just got all that good vibes going on.
Energy.
Makes the team feel good about themselves. Okay, here, let's go to Conrad. And he says, how about the L.A. Rams draft, Lee? Rams just beefed up their defense and could be serious contenders within the next 3 years.
They bounce back. They found an entire offensive line last year. And they slotted those guys in, and they all played. And they were kind of unique to the exception. They did not lose anybody to catastrophic injury in the offensive front, and usually that happens to everybody. So that group's there and got all that game experience, and you got Stafford they kept upright. That heavy-duty running back is back for his 3rd starting season. They drafted a 3rd-down running back to go with him. So I just tend to think that the Rams, because they got the defensive end, and they got the defensive tackle, then they got the running back. And I don't know about the other. They had, 11 picks, and I think they drafted 9 guys. I don't know about the other 6 that they drafted, but that's what OTAs and minicamps are. But I gave them a letter grade A. And when we're done, you go read what I wrote about the Rams on my website, too.
How do you think the Rams are going to fare in the NFC West? Maybe number 2?
Yeah, I haven't given much thought to that. My brain is so clogged with names off the draft board. I close my eyes and I see names scrolling through my eyeballs.
Do you still have your clipboard with all the scribble that you always do every year?
It's right over here.
Yeah, perfect.
And I haven't had a chance to sit down and actually go through pick by pick and slot it into each team. That's the next project on the equation.
I love it. Hacksaw grinding back at home. Okay, let's go here to Hitman. He says, Kawhi Leonard needs to retire. He's hurt too much.
Yeah, he's had a lot of bad run. And the quad injury was the beginning of it. He's had 2 knee surgeries on top of the quad injury. Hate to see it end this way because what a brilliant career he's been. He might be borderline Hall of Fame. He's such a good player. And we're always talking now about watch Kawhi hit this 3-point shot. Watch Kawhi put it on the floor and explode to the basket. We no longer talk about the size of Kawhi's hands, and look at all the rebounds he takes down, and look at the way he defends. I mean, this is a complete basketball player. And we saw him at San Diego State for an extended period of time. I don't think we ever imagined he would become this complete a basketball player. But he landed in the right place. He went to San Antonio with Popovich, and Popovich is a great teacher. Just like what Popovich is doing with Victor Wembanyama, the French teenager. And he just became a hell of a complete player under Popovich. And he went to Toronto, and they won the crown. And then obviously he's moved on since then. So I hate to see it end this way, but there's a lot of miles on that body for sure.
I remember when Kawhi came out from San Diego State after only 2 years in college, and I thought, it's way too early. He's not ready yet. And boy, he sure proved me wrong. I mean, he came out on fire, did great. And 2 MVPs in the final. It's just incredible. I mean, so God, can you imagine if the Clippers had all their guys healthy at the same time, what they could be?
They could be what we expect them to be in the NBA Western Finals or in the championship series, but they can't get free of injuries. I mean, it's happened again. It happened in the Chris Paul, Blake Griffin era, and now it's happened here with the Kawhi situation, and that's tough. Kawhi became such an offensive force so quickly in the NBA under what Popovich taught him. I never expected to ever see that. I thought he'd be just a phenomenal defensive guy, but that's not sexy. But boy, now he's a player in neon lights because of what he can do offensively.
Yeah, his mid-range and three-pointers were clunky at San Diego State. He's come a long way. Good for him. I was going to say something, but let's move on. Let's go to the next comment here. This is from Eagle Lion again. Lee Hacksaw on the Mount Rushmore of Southern California sports talk radio.
I agree.
Who else is on the Mount Rushmore with you?
Oh, my God. I would have to say Ted Leitner because of all the things he did. He pioneered TV really differently, like I pioneered sports talk radio really differently. Mm-hmm. And obviously everything he's done with the Padres, a little bit of it with San Diego State. So I would say he'd probably be up there. After that, you asked me too quick. I just have to go back and think. I would have to think that probably in terms of sports talk radio guys, I would have to think Steve Hartman, my partner at the original 690, has to be part of that equation. And then you will have a writing campaign to see who'd be the fourth guy. That's an interesting question. We maybe do we have so many topics that we want to talk about when we're putting our list together. We're just going to do one show separately. We're just talk about sports talk radio, then sports talk radio in San Diego now. We'll kind of fill in a show just with doing that rather than talking about the hot headlines.
Imagine it'd be hard to pick four. I mean, there's Vince Scully, there's Chick Hearn.
Well, I thought he was just talking San Diego.
No, Southern California.
Southern California.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to add Chick Hearn and Vince Scully, then there's only 2 slots left. I thought he was making reference to just San Diego sports talk radio.
But there's just some amazing talent here in Southern California.
Yeah.
Good for you, Lee, man. What you've done is just incredible.
Blame me. Go ahead. It's all on me.
Okay. Let's go to John. He says, hated watching it, but Igor Stretch, I don't know how you say that. Shesterkin completely shut down Alex Ovechkin, TJ Oshie, and Tom Wilson. Igor, I think, will win the Vezina.
Vezina.
What's that?
That's the trophy for the top goaltender in the NHL.
Ah.
Ovechkin, I hate to say 200,000 miles, he did not score a point in the Washington Capitals series when they got swept by the Rangers 4 straight. And this is a legendary Hall of Famer, global hockey star. He did not score a point. Oshie, I feel bad about. He was a recipient of a couple cheap shots. I don't think he ever got to be 100% healthy along the way. Washington, good season. Rangers, nobody on the West Coast pays attention to Ranger hockey. They have so much goal scoring, and that goaltender is really, really good.
It's interesting with hockey here in Southern California. Like, I'm raised in California. Hockey is foreign to me. But you know so much about the sport, and so many fans here in Southern California really appreciate you for talking hockey, because very few people do talk hockey down here.
We all come from somewhere. I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up on Eastern Long Island. I got to see, and I was not a Rangers fan, then I saw the Islanders come as an expansion team with Dennis Potvin and all those great players. I got to see them grow to be a champion. But I had access to Hockey Night in Canada. As a guy who wound up being a broadcaster, I so appreciate what I was exposed to with Hockey Night in Canada. And, the same on everything else. I saw the New York Giants Baltimore Colts championship game as a kid in 1958 in black and white. And they say that's the game that triggered the NFL on TV to become the monstrous success it is right now. And I grew up with the Yankees. Now, these are names that most people would not realize, except if they're in our age demographic. But I grew up with Mel Allen and Phil Rizzuto and Red Barber. I grew up with Vin Scully and Jerry Doggett. I grew up with Les Kiter of the old New York Giants. So I kind of grew up in an environment in which I got access to a lot of things. But I grew up and I fell in love with hockey, and I fell in love with Hockey Night in Canada.
It would be great to be hanging out with you, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, as a kid. I looking at baseball cards and watching stuff on TV. This is great. Let's go here to Dave. He says, what does an NFL team receive as financial compensation to play in England? Obviously, an EPL team would lose a lot. Every match is sold out, isn't it?
Yeah, for the most part. And obviously there's the cut of the TV pie. But the NFL, when it sends its teams to play abroad, they pick up all the expenses. And then because an NFL team would be forfeiting a home game, like Jacksonville's given up 2 home games a year because the franchise wasn't drawing very well. It's in an old stadium, et cetera, et cetera. They also are given a stipend for each amount of gross revenue they don't get in home revenue because they're giving up that home game. So, I mean, the league takes care of them. It's a profit thing for the Jaguars or anybody else who goes abroad. It's hard. It's really hard on your team because you got short work weeks, you got the travel, obviously you got the schedule, and the league has tried to help them by giving them a bye week after they're coming back from Europe. But it's not easy. Like the Eagles, they're going to play in Brazil. You know, we've had teams that have played in Japan, and they're expanding. We're going to play a game in Spain. There's going to be a game in France. And obviously the multiple, was it 4 games now, I think, in London, England that are being played. But those teams are compensated. But boy, the wear and tear factor is amazing. All right, let's do another quick thing, social media here before we put a lid on this.
But before we put a lid on it, all right, let's go down here to social media, and let's talk a little Reggie Bush. Boy, so much comments on this one. This is from Antonio, and he says, take. His violations didn't impact his on-field performance. He was the best college football player and should never have had that taken away. Guys like O.J. Simpson and Johnny Manziel can keep their trophies, but not Reggie. Wild that it was ever taken away, and everyone knows the sanctions placed on USC were severely unwarranted.
Well, they should have never taken the trophy away because they'd never done that prior to other guys who had gotten in trouble post-football careers. So that's an issue. My beef is that it happened. I've seen the documentation, the credit card bills that were signed. I know about the transfer of the money, $300,000 cash. I do not buy the theory that since in 2024 athletes can be paid, that rule should be flipped all the way back to 2004 because of what Reggie Bush and his family took. The rules were the rules in 2004 that you can't have extra benefits. And that applied to a kid that played at Michigan or the kid that played at Texas or a kid that played at Florida State, whatever. And Reggie Bush and his family went against that. He never cooperated and he never apologized. And they killed USC. Those sanctions were brutal. Outside of the death penalty they gave SMU in the Eric Dickerson, Craig James era, this had to be the second most severe sanction. 30 scholarships. Southern Cal has never recovered. And what bothers me, Reggie never admitted to anything, yet everybody knows he did it. And he never apologized to USC to what happened to the football program. Oregon and Washington did not knock down USC. What Reggie Bush and his family took did. And the Trojans have never recovered from that. I honor him. I honor him as a great, great football player, but I can't honor him as a person. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're wrong. The fans have overwhelmingly come out and saying this is BS, the whole thing, you know, and it's like selective enforcement. So Johnny Manziel, did he have his Heisman Trophy taken away? Did Texas A&M get sanctions? What about Cam Newton? He was at Auburn, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, what happened in that situation? Why weren't those two guys busted?
I don't think they found deep enough dirt on them.
But Reggie Bush is adamant that he's innocent. Well, I mean, how could he be so certain that he is innocent when you say he's totally guilty?
He just would not cooperate, did not want to testify. And yet I've seen signed documents with his name on it. Credit card bills, Vegas, airlines. And the family took the money. $300,000 plus a brand new house.
But, you know, like, what about the UNLV basketball team? They took the money, right, from the boosters there. This is going on all over college sports. And it's just, you know, they protect the SEC teams. They protect the Big 12 teams, but they zing the Pac-12 guys.
Well, SEC teams have gotten nailed. You know, Deion Sanders was at Florida State. They got their ass put on probation. All types of illegal inducements from the boosters. But do you know what FSU stood for in that era? Free Shoes University. Because the players were being given everything, and they got nailed. So, and the SEC teams have gotten nailed.
Yeah.
Kentucky wound up going on probation in basketball. So, but there were also stretches of time. One of the common jokes was the NCAA is so upset at how many violations they found at Kentucky. So upset, they put Eastern Kentucky on 4 years probation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, you want to get one more in?
One more in here.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Coyotes. And this is from Jervil, and he says, Salt Lake City is far better than Quebec. Let's just look at one thing. The Canadian dollar. Winnipeg is struggling to bring in fans to fill up the smallest arena in the NHL. Keep the Coyotes in the United States and move them to Salt Lake City. If Winnipeg happens to fail, and it honestly looks like they can, move Winnipeg to Quebec for a while, even while until it's time to move out that franchise to Kansas City or Houston. Yeah, I said what I said.
Well, it's a complex issue. Arizona has just been a disaster for the league, and yet the league would not leave Arizona because of the size of the market, but they just never got an arena built, and it's just a massive issue there. Going to Salt Lake City is a limited market. Now, it'll be a novel thing for the first couple of years, but do they keep it up? That remains to be seen. You got to win. And Arizona looks like it's a long ways away from winning. I'm just biased because I happen to think it's the Canadian game, and I think Quebec City would be a phenomenal regional market to compete with Montreal, with Ottawa, and with Toronto. But I've got Canadian ties, so that's why I'm biased towards them. You got Houston, which is massively exploding, and you've got all multiples of arenas in there. Kansas City built a new arena, AEG, out of Los Angeles. Built a great arena in Kansas City that never gotten a sniff for a NHL franchise. Of course, they had a franchise at Kansas City Scouts a long time ago, and it failed, and it wound up moving to New Jersey, I believe. They became the New Jersey Devils. So it's too bad. I don't know where the NHL is going to go. I think expansion is on the horizon, and we'll just have to say, I'm biased. I just think Quebec City deserves a franchise.
Interesting. And Kansas City built an arena, and they don't even have an NBA team. So how many? Okay, like Major League Baseball has 30 teams. The NFL has 32.
NBA has 30, and hockey's got 30.
30. Okay, so I mean, how much do you think this could expand? Do you think they could get to 40 teams? It wouldn't go that big.
No. We're not putting a franchise in Fargo, North Dakota, please. I think we'll see 32 or 34, and it's all big money. It's all mega money right now. But to get a franchise, John Riley wants a franchise in his backyard. That's going to cost you $2 billion now. Price tag is
that's just the franchise fee too, right? I mean, then you got to put the capital in to fund it. Yeah,
exactly. Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed what we brought your way on a Monday. Just a reminder, check my website, fill out, join Hacksaw's Insiders Group, get my NFL draft recap. It's right there in my One Man's Opinion column. And be with us on Thursday. We'll be back here. Our podcast brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center Stores, 9 locations to serve you in San Diego, and by North County Eye Center of Poway and Escondido. John, take a deep breath, gather your thoughts, get your eyeballs straight again after watching so much football, and we'll be back Thursday to talk playoffs and to talk baseball.
Playoffs? Were you talking about playoffs?
NBA or NHL.
Okay.
Thanks for being with us, and thank you for joining us on Hacksaw's Headlines.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast apps.
Touchdown, San Diego!
For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.